Alright, what's up everyone? So we're back with a new video. Today I'm going to be talking about how to become a better artist. A lot of people don't really know how to become a better artist because sometimes they're stuck or they don't really have any direction or anyone to help them. One of the main things I could recommend is getting an apprenticeship or getting a mentor. If you're already kind of past that, one of the main things I learned early on was having self-realization of where I'm at with my tattooing or with my art or in life in general. One of the main things that I realized was my tattoos weren't that good, my line work sucked, my shading sucked, and I needed to get better. Once I realized that, everything was easier because I understood the things that we're doing weren't where I needed them to be. The lines weren't coming out straight, the shading wasn't coming out smooth. I barely knew how to break down my station, how to do stencils and things like that. So I would find ways in YouTube, and this was probably maybe 10 years ago, and the YouTube videos, there weren't that as many as there are today, where you could look up so many artists that show you how to do certain things. And back then there wasn't as many, and so it was a little bit harder. So I understood I needed to get an apprenticeship, and I got my apprenticeship and I was able to learn things and things like that. But one of the main things for a lot of artists is they don't realize where they're at with their tattooing. There's a lot of artists out here that might be not so good with their lines and their shading, don't know how to stencil, and they're already trying to do portraits. And when you do things like that, you're kind of going backwards, because if you could barely do lines or shading, you have no business doing portraits. Like, if you can't do a rose that's way more simple, how do you expect to do a portrait? And I guess there is a lot of people out here that do that, and a lot of time it's because they do a small amount of tattoos and they get a lot of comments on their social media telling them how good they are, and they get in their head and they get a big head, or it inflates their ego, and then they feel as if they're good and that they don't need anyone. And that messes you up. If you want to become a great artist, you have to understand where you're at and take all the criticism, take all the advice you can get. And when you take advice, doesn't mean you have to take everyone's. You got to rule out the good ones from the bad. So that's when you just try out certain things that make sense. If it doesn't really make sense, just try it out a bit. And if it's feeling okay, keep going with it. If it feels completely wrong, don't do it, obviously. And I feel like that's one of the biggest things where people mess up on. So if that's you, that's where you need to change. If you're past that already and you realize where you're at with tattooing and you're still not where you need to be, that means you got to be around better artists. That's the best way, just around better artists, so they can teach you, so you can just be around that energy and everything around it, and that's going to benefit you a lot. That's one of the main things that I've learned starting with when I started tattooing, was just realizing where I was at and going around places where I can learn. And that's with everything, with tattooing, with art, with life. And you just want to always do that, is just realize where you're at in life, with tattooing, with everything. It's going to benefit you a lot. When people think they're somewhere, or they think they're good at tattooing but they really aren't, and they really somehow got that in their head, it's because they're all messed up with that. And until you get over that, you're not going to get where you need to be. And I've been around artists that like that, where they ask for advice but they don't use it, or they feel like they're going to figure it out doing the exact same thing they keep doing over and over again. And that's just kind of crazy. You can't be doing the same things over and over again and thinking you're going to get a different outcome, basically. So that's one of the main things. So I did my apprenticeship, I got through it. I learned a lot of things, and I learned what not to do also. I ended up working at the same spot, tattooed there for a while just because there was a lot of walk-ins, and I felt like during that era, like, my tattoos didn't suck, but they weren't as good as I wanted them to be. And I feel like up until then I wasn't really around the greatest of artists. I wasn't around artists that sucked. But there was way better artists out there in the world, and I wanted to be around better ones. So the second shop, I ended up working at a different shop with way better artists. And that's where I learned a lot more things, picked up a lot of things on certain mags, how to shade, how to do portraits, and it really elevated my game. And that was just me elevating myself, and I kept putting myself in positions where I needed to learn and out of my comfort zone. And that's what you gotta do. You just gotta really keep changing your scenery and figuring things out. And through all of these times, I had a self-realization of where I was at. Even though my tattoos got way better, I understood that certain things weren't as good, or they needed to improve. And that's what I kept doing. I kept tattooing, I kept drawing, I kept studying, I kept learning. And you can't be scared to keep doing that. You gotta keep going no matter how long you've been tattooing. Even now, where I don't see myself working at another shop because I opened up my own shop, but I could see myself going out to more conventions and guest spotting in the future and things like that. And that's where I'm gonna learn more things. But for now, I'm just doing what I'm always doing, and tattooing, I'm drawing, painting, and obviously social media, but that's a whole different thing within itself, because you're still learning with recording, editing, and all these other things. But that's one of the biggest things for you to become a very great artist, is self-realization. You know, a lot of people, obviously you have to tattoo and get better at tattooing, but if you don't understand where you're at, you're just going to be stuck the rest of your life. And also, I have a new course out. I don't know if you guys seen it already. It's on my other social medias. It's how to tattoo black and gray. I'll be coming out with a lettering one soon. It should be out in maybe in a week or two after this video drops. I'm not exactly sure yet. Hopefully sooner. But you guys remember, with tattooing, it's not only the tattooing, the drawing. There's a lot more to it. A lot of times you want to quit and you just don't want to keep going. You want to change it up, or everything gets very repetitive sometimes, and it gets tough to keep pushing. But those are the times where you got to put in the most work, you know. And I'm not telling you, if you feel like you don't want to tattoo or you're getting burned out, I don't mean go and tattoo and make it even worse. Slow down the tattooing and get into some drawing, get into some painting. You know, if there's this, like, if you want to start recording more things, or a whole different hobby, like, switch it up a little bit. You know, you gotta really push through these little slumps you get, but at the same time you don't want to burn yourself out even more and start feeling depressed, or whatever it is that you're feeling. You know, it's okay to slow it down. It's okay to change it up. You know, there's a lot of artists out here that promote like pushing 24/7, or people in general, and you don't have to live like that or work like that. You know, a lot of times it's better to work smarter than harder, and that's what I've been doing lately. I kind of slowed it down a little bit with the actual tattooing. I'm trying to push out more quality tattoos and do other things. Just, I feel like after all these years that I've been tattooing, the first couple of years were very tough with learning. And for any of you guys, if you guys are barely starting, you know, you got like 2-3 years in, you gotta grind it out for sure. When I started, it was 24/7 grind, like from the shop home back to the shop again. It was very repetitive, but it was always work. And I got to this point that now I'm able to chill a little bit more, you know. But it's all self-realization at the end of the day, knowing where you're at. So you guys, please take your time with all these things. It's rough, but you get through it.